There are moments when a person sitting down to listen, a small story can change the way we see the world. Today's story is about Mai Can, a Vietnamese girl with a big heart, sowing seeds of understanding in souls full of prejudice. The early autumn air of Stockholm greeted Mai Can with a gentle, crisp coolness, a stark contrast to the tropical warmth she had left behind in Vietnam. As she stepped off the city bus, the imposing architecture of the square where the International Youth Conference was being held seemed to rise up to meet her. Hundreds of students, a vibrant tapestry of cultures and nationalities, milled about, their voices a low hum of excited chatter in dozens of languages. They were the future leaders, thinkers, and innovators, gathered in this historic European city to discuss the world's most pressing issues. Mai Can clutched the strap of her bag a little tighter, her heart a blend of exhilaration and a quiet gnawing apprehension. As she made her way through the crowd, she could feel the glances. They weren't overtly hostile, but they were filled with a certain kind of curiosity, a subtle skepticism that she had grown accustomed to. In these international forums, she was often one of the few, if not the only, representative from her homeland. To many here, Vietnam was not a country of bustling cities, innovative startups, and rich, evolving culture. It was a ghost, a chapter in a history book, a name synonymous with a war fought decades before they were born. The weight of those preconceived notions settled on her shoulders, but it did not bow them. She took a deep, steadying breath, the cool Scandinavian air filling her lungs. "I am not here to argue," she whispered to herself, a silent mantra to bolster her resolve. "I am here to share the truth. The truth will speak for itself." With that, she walked forward, a lone flag in the wind, ready to represent the vibrant, living story of her nation. Brandon, an American student with a keen intellect and an even keener sense of justice, watched Mai Can from across the bustling conference hall. He had been raised on stories from his grandfather, a veteran, and on films and news archives that painted Vietnam in shades of gray, a land of conflict, struggle, and sorrow. The narrative was so ingrained in his consciousness that meeting someone his own age from that country felt like encountering a figure from a historical documentary. He observed her as she moved with a quiet grace, her demeanor poised and thoughtful. He saw the polite yet distant way others interacted with her, the subtle wall of assumptions that seemed to surround her. It was a phenomenon he recognized, the invisible barriers built from ignorance and inherited prejudice. During the lunch break, the vast dining hall was a cacophony of languages and laughter. Groups of students clustered together, sharing meals and forging fast friendships. Amidst the lively scene, Brandon noticed Mai Can sitting at a small table by herself, her focus on the plate of food before her. A pang of something empathy, curiosity, a sense of shared humanity stirred within him. He saw not a symbol of a historical conflict, but simply a young woman, perhaps a little lonely, in a foreign city far from home. He picked up his tray and, with a decisiveness that surprised even himself, walked over to her table. "Excuse me," he began, his voice cutting through the din just enough for her to hear. "Can I sit here?" Mai Can looked up, a flicker of surprise in her dark, intelligent eyes. She offered a small, genuine smile and nodded, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. That simple nod, that quiet acceptance, was the beginning. Their conversation started tentatively, with the usual conference pleasantries, questions about their studies, their impressions of Stockholm, their hopes for the week's discussions. But as they spoke, the initial awkwardness dissolved, replaced by a sincere and effortless connection. Brandon found himself captivated by her perspective. She spoke of a modern Vietnam, a country of dynamic energy, of resilient people who cherished their history but were not defined by it. She described the vibrant street food culture of Hanoi, the breathtaking landscapes of Ha Long Bay, the burgeoning tech scene in Ho Chi Minh City. For every stereotype he had ever heard, she offered a nuanced personal truth. She didn't lecture or debate, she simply shared. She listened to his own views, to the stories he had been told, with an open and non-judgmental ear. In her gentle words and sincere gaze, Brandon didn't find the defensiveness or anger he might have expected. Instead, he found a profound sense of peace and a quiet strength. The ghost from the history books was fading, replaced by the image of this intelligent, warm, and engaging young woman. A powerful desire began to take root in his mind, a desire to see this country for himself, to walk its streets and meet its people. He wanted to understand the Vietnam that My Can knew, the one that existed beyond the black and white photos and grainy newsreels of the past. The seeds of change had been planted. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the conference library, Margaret, a distinguished scholar and a respected panelist, was deeply engrossed in her own world of research. With decades of academic experience, her understanding of Vietnam was built upon a foundation of established texts, political analyses, and historical accounts, most of them written from a Western perspective. She had spent her career studying the geopolitical shifts of the 20th century, and the Vietnam War was a cornerstone of her expertise. As she sifted through documents and prepared her notes for an upcoming presentation, she felt a familiar confidence in her knowledge. The narrative was clear, the facts established, the conclusions drawn. Her concentration was broken by the voice of July An, a bright and eager young student who served as one of the conference assistants. July, whose own family had roots in Southeast Asia, had been deeply moved by My Can's contributions in the morning's breakout session. "Professor Margaret," July began, her voice respectful but firm, "have you had a chance to speak with the delegate from Vietnam, My Can? What she shared this morning?" It was different. It wasn't about politics or historical grievances. It was about people, about art, about the taste of the food and the sound of the language. It was so honest. Margaret looked up from her papers, a hint of scholarly dismissal in her eyes. She had heard countless personal anecdotes over the years. They were often emotional, but rarely did they alter the established historical record. Yet July's words lingered. Honest, the word echoed in the quiet library, challenging the certainty of Margaret's own scholarship. She looked down at the documents spread before her: statistics, military reports, political treaties. For the first time, she felt a sliver of doubt. These papers told a story of strategies and outcomes, of ideologies and casualties. But where, in all these pages, was the story of the people July had spoken of? Where was the resilience, the culture, the life that continued and flourished beyond the headlines of war? Margaret realized, with a disquieting sense of revelation, that for all her academic mastery, she had never truly known the whole truth. She had studied the storm, but she had never listened to the people who had lived through it and rebuilt in its wake. A new line of inquiry began to form in her mind, a question not of what happened, but of what was lived. The scholar's meticulously constructed worldview was beginning to crack. Thus, within the grand halls of the Stockholm Conference, the quiet ripples of change had begun. Through the simple, powerful acts of sharing her story and listening with an open heart, My Can was becoming a gentle but undeniable force. She wasn't leading a protest or delivering a fiery speech. Instead, she was planting seeds of curiosity in the mind of an American student, seeds of doubt in the convictions of a seasoned scholar. She was showing them that behind the flag of a nation, behind the monolithic identity assigned to it by others, there were individual souls, personal truths, and a world of stories waiting to be heard. The flags of prejudice were beginning to waver in the wind of a new, shared understanding.